From the skies of Hanoi to the jungles of the Mekong Delta, the Vietnam War was as much a battle of aircraft as it was of men and terrain. Every roar of an engine, every flash of a missile, carried the desperate ingenuity of a nation determined to defend its homeland against a superpower. This wasn't just a clash of ideologies. It was a fierce contest of aerial power. The United States, with its advanced fleet of jets and bombers, expected air superiority to dictate the war. But the Democratic Republic of Vietnam, what we know as North Vietnam, had other plans. Despite having fewer resources and often older technology, they used every aircraft at their disposal to challenge the might of the U.S. Air Force, Navy, and Marine Corps. Today, we're diving deep into the skies of the Vietnam War to explore the surprisingly diverse and effective arsenal of the Vietnamese People's Air Force. In the early years of the conflict, before the skies were filled with supersonic jets, North Vietnam relied heavily on older propeller-driven aircraft. The venerable Ilyushin Il-28 bomber, a Soviet-supplied jet-powered light bomber, was one of the first threats. Though it was subsonic and vulnerable to American fighters, these planes were crucial for striking U.S. supply routes and military installations in South Vietnam. They represented the initial backbone of North Vietnam's strategic bombing capability. But it wasn't just about bombers. The Vietnamese also used much older designs for very specific, very clever purposes. Take the Polikarpov Po-2 biplane, a design straight out of the 1920s. You might think a fabric-covered biplane has no place in a jet-age war, but you'd be wrong. These slow, quiet planes were perfect for night harassment missions. Flying low and slow under the cover of darkness, they were incredibly difficult for American radar and fast-moving jets to detect and intercept. They would drop small bombs or grenades, not to cause massive damage, but to disrupt sleep, create psychological stress, and keep enemy forces on constant alert. Another workhorse was the Antonov An-2, a single-engine biplane that looks more like a crop duster than a military aircraft, but its versatility was its greatest strength. It could take off and land on short, unprepared airstrips, making it ideal for moving supplies and personnel through the dense jungle. Like the Po-2, it was also adapted for night raids, embodying the Vietnamese strategy of using what you have in the smartest way possible. These early aircraft might seem primitive, but they laid the groundwork for a sophisticated asymmetrical air war. They proved that you don't always need the fastest or most powerful plane to be effective. Sometimes, being clever is more important. As the war escalated in the mid-1960s, particularly with the start of Operation Rolling Thunder, the American bombing campaign against the North, the nature of the air war changed dramatically. North Vietnam knew that propeller planes wouldn't be enough to defend its skies against fleets of American supersonic jets. The jet age had arrived, and with it came the MiGs. The first major player was the Mikoyan-Gurevich MiG-17, codenamed Fresco by NATO. On paper, it was no match for the American F-4 Phantom II. The Phantom was faster, larger, and carried more advanced missiles. U.S. pilots, trained for high-speed beyond-visual range missile combat, were often shocked when the slower MiG-17s would get inside their turning circle, close the distance, and tear them apart with powerful cannons. The MiG-17 forced a complete change in American aerial combat doctrine. It taught us pilots a hard lesson. Speed isn't everything. The skies over Vietnam became a deadly classroom where agility and cannons could still defeat speed and missiles. But the real game-changer was the arrival of the MiG-21, NATO codename Fishbed. This was North Vietnam's entry into supersonic combat, a lightweight, delta-wing interceptor. The MiG-21 was capable of speeds exceeding Mach 2. Unlike the MiG-17, it could climb rapidly to high altitudes and dive down on American bomber formations in devastating hit-and-run attacks. Vietnamese pilots, many of them trained in the Soviet Union, developed incredibly effective tactics. They wouldn't engage in prolonged dogfights unless necessary. flying low over the Ho Chi Minh Trail or near American fire bases. These slow planes would drop small bombs, mortars, or even just metal scraps to harass convoys and forward bases. While the US famously defined the Vietnam War with the helicopter, deploying thousands for transport, gunship support, and medevac, North Vietnam's use of rotary aircraft was much more limited. They didn't have the vast fleets to conduct large-scale air assaults. However, helicopters like the Soviet-made Meeferhound played a vital, behind-the-scenes role. This transport helicopter was crucial for moving troops, key leaders, and essential supplies through the dense, unforgiving jungle terrain where roads didn't exist. This information was priceless. It allowed MiG pilots to know where American formations were, and it helped SAM operators prepare their ambushes. It was this tight integration of reconnaissance, intelligence, and combat forces that made the Vietnamese air defense so formidable. Every piece of the puzzle, no matter how small or seemingly insignificant, worked together to create a unified and highly effective fighting force. By the end of the war in 1975, the Vietnamese People's Air Force had achieved a level of success that stunned Western military analysts. Their diverse fleet, from ancient biplanes to supersonic MiGs, had stood against the most powerful air force on the planet. American pilots, who initially underestimated their opponents, learned to respect the skill, courage, and tactical brilliance of the Vietnamese pilots. They learned that a MiG-17 in the hands of a well-trained pilot could be just as deadly as an F-4 Phantom. The legacy of Vietnam's air war is a testament to the power of strategy over sheer technology.